Hey YouTube, Sean here. As promised, today I'm going to be sharing a little bit more details about how I managed to scale and grow my professional income up to achieve low six figures. Now, when I look back and I reflect, one of the important ingredients, in fact, critical ingredient that I discovered is the fact that sometimes in life when you are pushed to a corner, it gives you a sense of urgency. And the sense of urgency stems from the fact that you are desperate. And because you're desperate, you have no other choice but to perform and achieve the goals that you want in the shortest time possible. And that's exactly how I felt when I realized that I wanted to make more money uh, in my corporate career. Because of this urgency, I remember crunching long hours, learning courses on data analytics. How do I think about data model design? How do I design the front end Power BI and all the way to the details of actually building the product. In whatever trench or quote unquote bad spot you think you're in, always try to see the silver lining because the fact that you're in that spot gives you a very powerful ingredient, and that's the sense of urgency. And the last thing you want, and the last thing you want to feel is getting too comfortable in wherever you are right now and then losing that sense of urgency and then eventually being mediocre and not pushing your boundaries. Okay, so when I start off as in a company, the first thing that you need to think about, number one, is to be perspicacious. Okay, what I mean by this, when I wanted to pivot into the tech space in data, the first question I asked myself was, how am I gonna compete with all the other candidates who studied computer science and are probably a lot more trained and skilled in the tech space, right? You're talking about your Googler, your Amazonians, your Facebook, Meta, etc. But if you think about it, then what I observed was in every single company, even non-tech company, there's bound to be the need for data analytics and analysis for management to make strategic decisions, right? And that's really how I decided to tackle this problem. So basically, what I did was I decided to go for a role in a non-tech firm, but a tech role. So basically, a data tech role in a non-tech firm, if that makes sense. And after a couple of rounds of try and error, interviewing, polishing my resume, I managed to land a role. So the next question, when you get into the role, it's you're going to start from the bottom of the food chain, right? You're basically a data analyst, and then you'll probably be working with a few senior data analysts and of course an analytics manager. So that's the case for me. But the most important thing is you got your foot in first, right? At least you can start the first 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years, building real experience in companies and building out your portfolio. And that is extremely important, and that leads to the second point that I'm about to share. And the second point is your self-branding and your image in the company is super important. And this, for those who read The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, is law number 5. So much so depends on your reputation. Guard it with your life. When I was in the company, I remember I was hungry to take on as many projects as possible. And of course, being smart about it, yeah. Pick projects which have high impact, right? And high effort, high impact, so that it gives you the visibility in management. And that's exactly what I did. The last thing you want is to pick a project that has high in effort and low in impact. So really, you only get to gain experience points of building a product and practicing your tech skills without having much of a career progression, because management do not see that as a high value activity. So be smart about it. How does this link to self-branding is when you take on various projects, the the speed and the quality at which you deliver the product and communicate the product to your end users and get them to adopt and give feedback about the product is super important. I remember my mentality was, because I was data analyst, I wouldn't say volunteered, but I agreed to take on several projects, especially those that can give me visibility and learn more about how to actually build a product. In this case, a dashboard on Power BI. And I know my aim goal is very clear. I want to show people that I can deliver a product that's good, usable, and creates good value for the company. Now, I had a bit of imposter syndrome back then because I was a data analyst. I knew how to build a product. I knew how to crunch data and stuff, but I'm not quite there yet. So what I did was, I kid you not, for almost a year, every single weekend I spent a couple of hours polishing my skills. I actually spent money to learn a data analytics course from Corporate Finance Institute called CFI. I sat through the course, I actually built real products, and then I applied my skills to build and launch products for my company. So that was how, long story short, I managed to uh, gain so much skills in building actual products, which is something that I see lacking in so many companies. When you can deliver good products internally, you already see as a valued employee in any company. And the reason why is because, more often than not, many large companies often outsource their data analytics or tech stack to external vendors, and external vendors would then charge an obscenely high amount of money for, let's say, a dashboard, which doesn't even, one, look appealing, and two, communicate and deliver the business outcomes. And that's really the gap that I saw, is because the vendors who build the products for the company are usually people who are not in the company and therefore do not understand the processes of the company. So if I could anchor myself as someone who could, number one, understand the business processes, number two, have a strong business acumen, and of course build a relationship with your stakeholders, and number three, be technically sound to build the product, I felt that there was a foolproof strategy to ensure that I get my promotion and I build my self-branding right there. And that's exactly what I did. I delivered many products. My self-image branding started to improve. People see me now as a trustable and reliable and of course capable analyst who can not only communicate technical details in a simple way to business stakeholders but also build the technical product. So that's really my journey, and that's how I got my first promotion. Stop losing your social media, stop mindlessly scrolling, and just pick up a course or stop practicing for 3 to 6 months, and I guarantee you'll be doing well. And the third point that I wanted to share with you guys that helped me propel my career is always fearlessly assume roles beyond your existing scope. What I mean by this is, if you're an analyst, never have the self-limiting belief that I'm just an analyst. Think, behave and act like a senior analyst. And if you're a senior analyst, think and act like a data lead. If you're a lead, think and act like a manager or a senior manager, and so on. This advice it's self-coined by myself, but I think it's pretty good. And I never once put a cap on my image. I make sure that I'm always seen as a valued partner. I show my interest, that I'm willing to contribute in projects that might seem complex, but what I also learn is no matter how complex a problem is, if you can break down the problem into small bits and then solve each bit and then put those bits together, you generally would solve the problem. And I see one of the mistakes that people make more often than not is to think that I'm just a, let's say, analyst, and therefore I should only perform what's required of an analyst and nothing more. This is the mindset that would kill your career and that's the mindset that would, I would say, slow your growth, in fact put it to a halt, as opposed to someone who shows interest in assuming roles. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because if, let's say, you are the boss and you know someone who's already performing a role that's more senior than the current role, you're more likely to give the person the promotion because that person has already proved that he or she is ready. So it makes a lot of sense. But of course, try to balance it, because sometimes you might end up burning out because you're just taking on so many projects and double triple heading. So that's the reason why I always say be strategic about it, pick high impact projects and focus on those. Okay. And another tip that I always have is, you know, when your image improves, right, and you assume roles that are beyond your current role, naturally people would start to give you more projects, right, because you are seen as a great guy or a great girl who can deliver the output. But then the question is, how do you then manage your workload? How do you then say no? One of the very good strategies that I learned from one of my mentors back in my previous companies is you never say no. First, you say, right, okay, I hear you. Let's sit down and listen to what you need, what are the requirements. Let me first understand your business requirements, gather the needs, and in the end, plot out a roadmap and a timeline towards we can get there to the end destination together. So that actually has been a very smart, very shrewd, and very effective strategy, because on one hand you're not saying no, and on the other hand you're not exactly saying yes that I'll deliver the project in the tight timeline that they want. And more often than not, people always give you that leeway to deliver the project in, let's say, 3 to 6 months, depending on complexity. You see what I mean? You're taking on a project right now, you're building on continue building on to your self-branding, and when you get pockets of time, you can actually work on it and deliver it to the stakeholder. And if the stakeholder likes it, then that further improves your self-branding, further improves your technical and business acumen, and the ball just keeps rolling, and you're just getting better and better. Yep, that's my journey from a data analyst to a senior data analyst, and then to a data lead. I hope you benefit from this, and see you around. Bye.